This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Gotham City, like any other large metropolis, abounds in girls of all shapes and sizes. Debutantes, nurses, stenographers, and librarians.
Gotham City Library, Miss Gordon speaking.
Lopez hair removal. This is Jose.
Holy transformation. 1 minute, plain Barbara Gordon, librarian and Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And the next minute, something new has been added. Batgirl, modeled after her idol, Batman.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Capes Crusaders.
It took me 3 years to track down the Jade Gato, and 3 more to figure out how to steal it.
Funny, it only took me 10 minutes to figure out how to snatch it back. No matter how you do it, crime doesn't pay girls.
Est Stella at Hawk Est Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. I'm flustered. Episode 212 for October MMXXI. Batgirl to Oracle is brought to you by Monthly Monday Movie Muckabout. Man, the alliteration is happening.
In a world filled with movie-themed podcasts, thousands speak their minds, shouting their opinions into the void. Into this terrifying world of sound and noise, a new podcast about movies dares to raise its head. Appearing on the Longbox Crusade Network, in association with Jeffiner Present, it is the era of Monthly Monday Movie Muckabout. Listen as people are challenged to see films that they have missed or failed to see. Hear their new appreciation for films from years past. Experience the discussions of film fans. Is the world ready for Monthly Monday Movie Muckabout? Yes. Yes, it is.
And cut. Perfect, Jeff.
Great. So when are we going to start this show?
Just me. This is my new show. I thought we talked about this.
Then why am I doing your promo?
Because in reality, I'm an egotistical puppet master that uses people for his own profit and fame.
Huh. Fair enough. Da-da-da-da, Monthly Monday Movie Muckabout. Watch a movie with me.
Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, hey, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. So if you're not watching the video, you people are missing out on a treat because I've got a half-naked, sweaty Dick Grayson gracing my screen here. This is the variant cover for issue number 1 of the upcoming Robin series, and no other person could have done this cover but Babs Tarr. And this is, this has been on my mind since it dropped. I've been sending it to people. I've been showing family members. Now, I get various reactions. I think this image right here could be the real test. What is that test called where if there's a sentient android or robot created, they have to undergo this test with a human to see if it passes, it's because the human didn't realize it was an android. I don't know if it's like the Turing test or something like that. I think this is the real test because if you don't get red-faced or faint from the sheer eroticism of it, you're clearly not human. And I'm talking to you, Thomas Panarese, because I sent this to him and I got no response. Now, I thought maybe he fainted, but even afterwards, nothing. Could he have been angry with me because I sent him a nude? I don't know. Sent it to my Tata correspondent, the Professor Carolyn Coca, and she sent back an appropriate GIF, which was a woman who was overheated and she poured water over her head. That's what I'm thinking about. Even Donovan had a reaction. So Tom, I've now found out, I've known him for a while. We've been hosting a podcast together for 5 years, 6 years now, and it's 5 years. Yes. And I never knew that he was an android until this very moment. So there you go. So I'm super excited about this. I'll actually talk about this a little bit later. I think I'll stop sharing now so my computer doesn't explode again from the sheer eroticism of it. I showed this to my sister-in-law and mother yesterday, and they probably wondered why it was on my phone. And I was in a public area. I was actually in a theater. And I really had no qualms about showing that and flipping that out. And then I showed them that one by Nicholas Scott, too, which is another favorite of mine. But may have to go and get a physical copy of that right there. I've been more doing the digital comics, but now it seems like, yeah, it's calling my name. Well, hello. We are in October. It is a beautiful day today. I just went on a walk. I'm going to later go see some Virginia women's football. I'm excited about that. And the temperatures have finally dropped. I've been very upset because they have been high temperatures and it hasn't seemed like fall, but now it's finally seeming like fall. So I'm loving it. So overall, I think today, knock on wood, has been a pretty good day. And I thought, hey, let's do a podcast. And this will just be part 1 because I'm still waiting for some modern issues to come out before I can do that. I also wanted to regretfully say that I won't be doing a Halloween special this year, which is really shocking because I've consistently done those, I would say, nearly from the beginning of my podcast. But it's just there's a lot of stuff going on. I've got this episode to do. I'm going to New York City this week, and the deadline for when this episode needs to come out is kind of crunching everything down. I'm applying to grad school, which I don't always like to publicize because then, if or when I don't get in, it's kind of regretful that I just made that public, didn't I? And, thinking about my Dear Reader, Jane Eyre podcast. And then also I have to edit Required Reading episode 60. So there's a lot happening. And I feel like maybe I shouldn't stress myself out more than I need to. So I think no episode special, Halloween special. But hey, there is Dear Reader, and that's a spooky gothic romance. So I feel like if you need your Halloween fill, you can go and listen to that episode 1, which has dropped already. I think that's it for, this news. I'm excited. I feel like There's been a lot of find your joy situations, but I did want to talk about what I just showed you, that erotic photo, which is Robin's number one. I guess that's mainly the big one. I already talked about Batgirls, and I'll talk about that again with the second half because there's a bit of a lead up to that actual series within Batman Urban Legends number 8. And I guess that's really it. Oh, and then DC Fandom, I don't know. Fandom has just hit, and there were so many things that came out. Gotham Knights, the video game, they had some stuff on that. There's going to be a Young Justice season 4, some big Cassandra Shiva stuff going on in there. And trying to think of other things that dropped. The Batman showed some things as well. Aquaman dropped some things. Yeah, there's a lot. I think that was yesterday. Just a lot of stuff happened. So I do recommend going over there and checking out some of that stuff. Okay, so let me talk about this Robins series. No idea that this was happening, but that's the point of news stories, right? So it's a 6-issue series, or will be, from writer Tim Seeley and artist Valdemar Rivas. And it's going to feature all 5 characters who have served as Batman's crime-fighting partner, including Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, and Stephanie Brown, which already that's a shock, right? That Stephanie Brown is actually called a Robin or a former Robin. I mean, if we were in the fictional world right now, I think that would be great and huge for her. I feel like a lot of people forget about that because she was fired and it was just a couple issues, but I'm glad that we're going to see that. And if I had all of them, I will say that the Jason Todd is also erotic. The Tim Drake, Damian Wayne one, I feel like they shouldn't make erotic. And I think that was just like, oh yeah, they're just working out. Oh, and those are the variants, the workout variants. And then the Stephanie Brown, I was just like, man, you work those abs, girl. You got it. That's like a workout goal that I'll look at and be like, yes, I need to be like Stephanie Brown. But anyways, here we go. So this article is from Entertainment Weekly. So Seeley told them the concept of Robin for so many people is the way that you get into superhero comics. It's a kid who gets to hang out with Batman. That's who you want to be when you're a kid, right? I mean, that was me when I was a kid. And each generation kind of gets a Robin. If you're my age, you got Dick Grayson because you got to see him through Teen Titans, become Nightwing, and then grow up with you. The generation after me got Tim Drake, and then there's Damian, who's for kids in the last 10 to 15 years, or, adults like me. And then you've got Red Hood. Wow, he didn't even mention Steph. And then you've got Red Hood now as a cool badass Robin for the ladies. For the ladies, huh? And for people who are attracted to that kind of guy. Okay, Tim Seeley. But I think if you put them all together, you're saying they all have the same value and weight, and they're all important, and who could resist that? Yet each Robin has also performed the role in their own way. This is now EW talking. They have different backgrounds, fighting styles, personalities. Rivas says that they all carry their weight differently, which is really cool because their personality definitely reflects how they fight. Tim gave me some great issues to study up on how they fight and their signature moves, which was very interesting. Damian's just a little firecracker, man. I've really been enjoying drawing Stephanie as well. Well, he mentioned Stephanie. She's going to be shining later on throughout this series. And then Seeley adds, Jason learned to fight on the street, so he's like a bare knuckle brawler. Damian has got all this training, so he's got this elegance to him. Dick is like a jazz musician. It's freeform, and he moves like a circus acrobat. And Stephanie, she's just kind of ticked off because her dad was a crappy supervillain. It's so much fun to play that as many different ways as you can. And Robin's number 1 is the digital first comic. It's going to go on sale November 14th, 7 days before my birthday. And of course, we've got these variants there. We see Babs Tarr's Dick Grayson, Nick Robles, Jason, Marcus Toe's Tim, and Jen Bartel's Stephanie. So the Damian one probably, does he have a workout variant? And hopefully that one's not erotic. I'm excited about this. I think that's interesting about Red Hood is for the ladies. I think you're incorrect. Dick Grayson is for the ladies and for people who are attracted to that kind of guy. So I guess the bad boy and the Tim Drake, he doesn't, or the Damian rather, about the kids in the 10 to 15 years. Maybe that's my bubble. I don't know. That seems like you're a bit past me, but Damian's my number 1. And then I'll be interested to see how he portrays and writes Steph. I think that'll be really important. So I'm looking forward to that. I think I probably will go on my local comic book. I haven't been on that website in years. I haven't been there since they moved, but I think I will probably try to get those variants, frankly, especially variant number 1. We all know why. Okay, well, besides erotic images of Nightwing, where have I been finding my joy? So this is Shag's mac and cheese of comfort and joy. So I, at the beginning of this month, ran a 5K. It's my favorite 5K. And it's called the Fall Foliage 5K. And actually, because it had rained before and actually after the race, so lucky it wasn't raining during. And there were leaves on the ground, so it's kind of folly. It wasn't as cool as I would have liked. I did better than last year. Last year, because of COVID, I wasn't as in shape, especially with running. Like my legs, I felt were huge because I had been cycling a lot and doing crazy hills and long rides and everything. But I felt like I hadn't been using the running muscles as much. So I did throw up after that one. But this one I did not, and I had a better time. So that was fun. I just yesterday went to see a local production of local to where my parents live, Legally Blonde, the musical, which I thought was really fun and great. And it was a smaller cast, and they did a wonderful job having all of their cast members, except for Elle, because you can't really do that, doubling, tripling, quadrupling, no exaggeration, characters. I mean, the woman who played the Paulette was basically every other matronly, I don't know, older female character. She just kept coming in and out, and people doubling over. And the Linda Cardellini character in the film was played by a man in a wig, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, and it was a really diverse cast, both racially as well as body type, which I thought was really good. But it was just, yeah, a lot of fun and supporting live theater, and then getting me warmed up for seeing Six in New York City this weekend. So I'm super pumped about that. And then finally, this past week, I did some Latin translations, and I had been telling myself, like, I really do need to keep up with it, especially if I'm going back to grad school, if I get in and getting that master's in education. It's not like I'm going to be able to take a Latin course along with it. So I just need to keep up to snuff. And so I was also scared, like, oh man, am I going to feel rusty? And no, I don't have experience in this, but it just felt like coming home to a great love, or a love coming back to you, and just, that comfort, just being around them, and how wonderful that is. So it's just so nice. I ended up choosing Pliny the Younger's letter to Tacitus, book 6, letter 16, talking about how his uncle Pliny the Elder went over to help some people out when Mount Vesuvius was going off, and that he passed away. And so that was, it was a lot of, well, it was a lot of fun. Some vocabulary, of course, that I hadn't interacted with ever, just because a lot of times Latin vocab is really context based. So I know a lot of war vocabulary and from Caesar, and then you've got my Virgil Aeneid vocabulary. And so sometimes it's just, it's not like I'm forgetting what puella means, but you've got vocabulary that is very specific to an erupting volcano or something like that. So it was, I didn't feel bad about using a dictionary. And there were a couple grammar spots that were specifically quo, for some reason, was giving me some trouble just with how it was being used. So I did look up my Allen and Greeno's grammar text and work through some stuff. And gosh, I thought, hey, I'm doing some prose here. So of course, we're not going to have any ellipsis in there, are we? Which is where certain words are dropped, and it frequently happens in poetry, because poetry, you have to fit the meter. So they'll drop words out, but it's easily with quotes understood what's probably missing. It often happens with sum, which is to be. So you're just missing, you could have a bunch of nouns or an adjective or something like that, and no verb, and you probably assume that it was like was or is or something like that was missing. And so I thought, oh, well, that's not, prose isn't looking to fit in any sort of meter, so I'll be okay. But no, there was ellipsis. I was like, plenty. Okay, well, this is good workup. But I just had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I did it during work, but it was a downtime. So, if the phone rang, I stopped, or if a therapist needed me, I went to assist them. But yeah, it was good, great fun. So I'm glad to be back with my lover, the Latin translations. I think that's it for Find Your Joy. Again, just having a fun time. I feel like it recently happened. I was kind of stressed out, had some unfortunate things happen before this, but so far, maybe it'll be a good end to October. And you know what I'm thinking is, if you're, I guess, friends with me on a social media, I usually post a countdown when we get to November of like days until my birthday. And so I think this year I'm going to I'm going to pair the countdown with an erotic image of Dick Grayson, because who doesn't need that? Oh, I'm so excited. Well, I know who doesn't. It's Tom Penneries, because he's an android. Okay, so just look forward to that when we get to November 1. Okay, so this episode seems to be all about the quickies, or at least the vintage half is, because I will be talking a bit more about the modern stuff. So I'm just going to run through this: 1 Green Arrow and then 5, I think, Nightwings. And I didn't just want to do quickies, and I was going to do DC Comics first, Batgirl and Joker #1, and I pulled it up to read it as I started skimming it to see like what it was involving and whether I could actually take it. #1, the art. No, couldn't handle that. And then, of course, it was a Joker, so I was already prepared somewhat for that, but I just thought, oh man, I can't do it. So I just was not in an emotional state to be thoughtful and caring about reading that and reviewing it. So it's not going to happen this episode. I'm trying to think of when it's going to happen. I guess it should. I mean, it is Barbara heavy. It's got Cassandra. It's Cassandra meeting and fighting the Joker for the first time. So it probably should happen, but not right now, folks. I'm human. I have limitations. And the other thing I was going to do was Batgirl. I think it was 31. And I thought it was a standalone, but it's actually part of an arc, 31, 32, and 33. Unless it was 30, 31, 32. But I started reading it and I was blasted with Roman history, which I thought, whoa, what's happening here? And I thought this would be good because I'm going to talk about Latin translations. And then I saw it was an arc and I thought, man, I can't, I don't have the energy to do all these quickies and then that. But this works out well because I'm going to try to get my former work husband, my ex-work husband, to come on and for the first time ever on my podcast and talk about those, just because it's got some Roman history. The Ninth Legion is highlighted, and Agrippina, I think Agrippina the Younger. So here's hoping I can get him on. Okay, so let's do some of this. And I do want to talk about some things in 75, Nightwing 75. And I also contacted Devin Grayson via the Twitters, and I asked her some questions. So I'll talk about that when I get to 75. But first, we have Green Arrow 17. For people who, it's been a while and I've done these quickies, remember that I don't do full reviews on these. I give you a publisher synopsis that I've most likely grabbed from Comixology, which I think is true of all of these. And then I just tell you what Babs is doing or has done in that issue. So we've got Green Arrow 17, November 2002 cover date. Writer Brad Meltzer, penciler Phil Hester, and inker Andy Parks. The subtitle is Archer's Quest, and this is part 2 of 6. Green Arrow and his former sidekick Arsenal are together again. The classic bow-slinging duo confronts the Shade over matters of death as the Emerald Archer sets out to pick up the scattered pieces of his past. And we don't even see Barbara. She's actually talking remotely to Dinah, who is working out. And she's working out. Oh, I can use a Zoigma. She's working out her body and her feelings. That Zoigma, that Ollie has returned back to life. That is. So that's it for that. Okay, so let's get into Nightwing. Ooh, Nightwing 71. Subtitle, Something About Mary. September 2002 cover date. Writer Devin Grayson. So she's beginning her run here. Devin Grayson, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delperdang, love his last name, or her last name. Oh no, I love the last name. Colors Gregory Wright. Chief Redhorn's wife has been keeping a journal, and though she may not know it, the journal implicates nearly every crooked cop and politician in Bloodhaven. Now she's suddenly the target of squads of assassins. So Dick seems to get hit on by a student at a self-defense class, and Babs makes fun of his response as well as asking if she should be worried. Hunk wonder. She talks to him after his shift, worried about how much sleep he isn't getting. This is going to be a theme. When he spots something shady, says, love you. And she says, yeah. Tell me again when you call back in 10 minutes for info. And he actually does, but this time in 12 minutes. So there, Babs. Later, she calls him while on mission with further info on Mrs. Walmer, aka Mary Redhorn. And I do want to say that the theme, of course, about you're not sleeping very much will carry through this arc that I'll be talking about. And the student at the self-defense class will be the future tarantula. And if you're a Nightwing fan, you know who this tarantula person is and why that's significant and why I'm pointing it out. So it's beginning to a certain extent. So I'm kind of wondering, are we sowing some seeds here, which I'll get back to. Then we go on to Nightwing 72, Roman Holiday, October 2002 cover date. Writer Devin Grayson, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delperdang, and colorist Gregory Wright. And actually those are the creator credits for all of these. So I think I'll stop saying that. Police Chief Red Horn's wife, Mary, flees to Rome and the Vatican, but she can barely keep a step ahead of the legion of assassins sent to snuff her out. Can Nightwing save Mary, or will he and hundreds of bystanders be mowed down in the process? This is like a tour de Europe. Actually, it'd be what? A tour de Europa. And it also reminds me, though it's a bad reference to make, to Babs doing Southeast Asia, if you remember that. I try not to. Okay, so Dick calls Babs when he lands in Rome on Walmer's trail, but she doesn't answer. Babs later patches Dick's police partner, Amy, on a call, I guess, where she asks about a bulletproof vigilante in Bloodhaven, aka Nightwing. And then later, Babs gives info on where Mary went to once she ends up fleeing Dick in Italy. Then we get to Nightwing 73, Cherchez la femme, which is a French phrase which literally means look for the woman. It's a cliche, actually, in detective fiction, used to suggest that a mystery can be resolved by identifying a femme fatale or female love interest, because it always is the woman's fault. November 2002 is the cover date. Chief Redhorn's wife, Mary, all of these are starting off with that, travels from Italy to France via a high-speed train. Some may call it a bullet train. It should be a simple ride for Nightwing, but when a cadre of gun-toting Bloodhaven cops climb aboard, they bring new meaning to the term bullet train. There you go, pun intended. Babs is speaking with someone on comms about how she is worried that Dick is going nonstop. When security, again, see the no rest. When security at Dick's goes off, it's actually Amy visiting. The person on the other end of the call with Babs offers to do something to help. We don't know who this is. And it turns out to be Wally West, which is actually the second time that we've seen the two of them, Wally and Babs, talk. The first time was in the aftermath of Joker's Last Laugh. I never remember if it's an apostrophe S, where she's kind of commiserating with him and how Dick has been acting. So Wally pretends to be a sick Dick Grayson, and he actually ends up getting Amy to leave by basically making violent hurling noises. I think that's what's called bilious vomit in the hospital world. And then later, Babs chats with Dick and friends about Mary and all the info she has on her husband's dealings. So it's really important that he protect her. Then we get to Nightwing 74, London Calling, December 2002. Mary's flight takes her to London, where she faces the most dangerous villains of her long journey. Lady Vic and Brutale, they're back. Nightwing must save Chief Redhorn's wife from two of the world's most dangerous assassins. So they're in London now. Babs calls Dick only to have Mary Redhorn answer. Mary tells Babs that he's in the shower, which of course earns a shocked face, because whenever you hear that, it's like, oh my gosh, this person's cheating on me. And that's usually the actual. And then later they gab. And she shames Dick for leaving his girlfriend in Gotham while he goes gallivanting around town. So she and Babs get off well, I guess. And then, of course, our old friends, Lady Vic and Brutale up here. We see them a lot in Birds of Prey, and now they're popping up over here. And then finally, of this arc anyways, and of my quickies, Nightwing 75, Judgment Day, January 2003. This is an exercise issue with Mary Redhorn's journal now with the feds. Bloodhaven is rocked to the core when mass indictments come down for the upper echelons of Bloodhaven politics, all the way down through the city court judges, sending a mass ripple effect through the infrastructure of Bloodhaven. Dick talks to Babs about flushing out a bunker of ESU guys, and they discuss who may be supplying them with heavy arms, probably Blockbuster, and that he needs sleep. There it is again. Later, after an interaction with Tarantula, yes, that Tarantula, Dick calls Babs to fill him in on the newest cape, and she thinks he's talking about himself, and there's some innuendo there. Babs is clearly flustered over it, even noting that his track record with women in tights is not great. Hashtag Huntress. Cough, cough, Huntress, I should have said. Given some of the scenes here, Babs should be worried. And don't worry, I'm going to be pulling all of this up here. Afterwards, Dick visits Babs. There's a shipper moment. They watch the news, which reports that 56 Bloodhaven Police Department officers have been indicted and 72 others are recommended to voluntarily retire. As they watch the news, he falls asleep, finally, and she kisses him. Okay, not going to review it. Again, just really, I think this isn't the Nightwing podcast. That's basically why I don't need to review it. But there are some really interesting things that happen here. This actually, the black and white, because it's 75, all the quarters really, kind of like in Hunger Games, all the quarters are really important. But this is kind of important. Devin Grayson, this is her first arc, and she has an anniversary issue of some sort. But this was fun to see these two having fun. And this was fun to see these two having fun. This was fun to see this particular flashback and feel like Devin, she's got it already, just that Dick is happy and Bruce is not. But at one point, Dick says, "Hey, Batman, what are we going to do once we finally get rid of all the criminals and everything? Move to another city?" You know, optimistic and everything. Bruce says, I should say Batman, right? They're Batman and Robin at this point. I don't think that's something you have to worry about, Robin. And then Robin says, okay, so then we'll just stay in Gotham and keep doing this thing, right? Forever and ever. And Batman says, we'll do this as long as it's effective. The emphasis is really on the page there, and feasible. And Robin, who's smiling, says, right, like I said, forever. So that reminds me of something I would say to somebody like, hey, we're going to be podcasting forever and ever, right? Until we die. Yeah, forever and ever. So anyways, there's some fun moments here flashing back. So let us get to some of these Babs moments. Oh, there was something I forgot to say. I don't think it's this one. But in one of the issues that I covered, I guess these were all by the same artist. Dick Grayson was half naked, and it was not as erotic and sexy as it should have been. I don't blame Jesse Delperdang. I should blame Rick Leonardi, unfortunately. So, Rick, you better get better with some of those sexy images. Okay, so let's see. First of all, here we've got Tarantula. Let's just take a gander at her. A midriff-bearing top. I mean, basically, it looks like she's wearing... Oh, that's weird that it goes all the way down the back. I was about to call it a halter top, but it's not. So it's a halter top in the front, and then it goes all the way in the back. Heavy gauntlet on one side, and just a glove on the other. And yeah, okay. So anyways, just, I guess, keep that in mind. So he calls, and so now he's chasing Tarantula, calls Oracle. She says, you called. He says, hey, beautiful. What can you tell me about the latest mask wearer on the Bloodhaven Rooftop Express? And she says, well, I can tell you that when he's good, he's very, very good. And when he's bad, which I enjoyed. He's like, no, I mean a new one. This one's a she. And she says in small, horrid. And he said, just once, sorry, that was my weird emphasis there. He says, repeat, I didn't catch that. So I guess seeing, oh man, yeah, because if you look lower on that page, she can see him. So this is really, really interesting. Okay. So shocked face, if you can't, if you're not on the YouTube, I'll try to describe this as much as possible. Shocked, surprised. The fact that her first, I guess, word association with the image, right? When I guess you go to therapy or play those, fun little icebreaker games, which I like to do occasionally. And if you showed an image to Babs of Tarantula from behind, I suppose, she would say horrid. And so this is really interesting character moment that we're seeing from Babs here. She says, I thought you were going to be busy tonight with the BPD shut-ins. Yep, was already over there when this new cape decided to show up and take down one of those bad boys on her own. And now you're chasing her, Babs says. She's got poison darts, haven't had time to analyze them yet, but hey, now that I think about it, she's got some kind of tarantula tribute thing going on with her costume, because there was, of course, a former tarantula. And okay, again, looking at this page, man. Okay. Last time I spoke with John Law, training a protege seemed like the last thing on his mind. And of course, we don't even know what side this lady's on yet, but Babs? And then she says, I'm here. So clearly not making Roy any comments when he was speaking, hands over her face, which I do sometimes, but most often in like serious, deep thought. I mean, when I was translating Latin, I was kind of like this with hand over head, really looking down at the Latin and everything. So she's going from shocked and surprised to seeing this, also potentially disgusted, to really contemplating. What are you contemplating? And she says, haven't heard anything about a new femme fatale, Dick. Sorry. And then he says, hey, you all right? You sound kind of down or something. And then she says, I'm fine, just busy. He says, you're sure? And then, man, well, you've got to admit your track record with girls in costume doesn't even finish the thought. And she ends up spilling her tea or her coffee or soda or whatever it is and says, damn it. And then, which clearly because of that. And then she's letting it all go over her table, her desk, not her computer, and then more softly says, damn it. And who even knows, Babs? Or she must have clicked out. Maybe that was why she's reaching for the cup. I just wonder what happened. It just spilt over. I mean, was she trying? Anyways, I don't know if in reaching for the cup and spilling it, she decides to cut the call, or she's trying to cut the call and spills it, but then she's clearly ended it because he's Babs, Oracle, which is interesting. I think I would have flipped that around bubble-wise, because I think he would have said Oracle and then more seriously Babs. And then he thought bubble-wise says the high priestess of tech doesn't usually go link dead. I hope everything's okay. Well, I'm sure Babs can take care of herself, which is more than I can say with any certainty about this newest addition to my allies and or rogues gallery. So yeah, this is just really an intriguing scene with how quickly Babs is put off and concerned and upset about this female tarantula. And I don't know, this is the first time I'm reading these sets of issues. I don't know if it's because she's insecure about her standing with Dick, which seems really interesting, but she does make a good point about women in costume and how he interacts with them. Huntress is a big thing. So that could be coming back for her. I don't know if she knows something more about this particular woman. Or tarantula in general, and there's some nervousness there. But I feel like it's, the woman thing in general. And given the fact that we saw in 71 that woman outside of the tarantula was really heavily flirting with Dick, that there's already cause for concern. But then if we keep going, he finds tarantula and talks to her, and then because of, I guess, how she's hanging and how he's hanging, he decides to do this move, which I can't even, for those not watching the video, basically he's straddling her. She's hanging on a lintel and he's hanging on to her and also straddling her. If we were on a bed, this would be very erotic, to use the word of the episode, I suppose. And then she ends up slapping him because, anywho. So I'm concerned, but poor Babs, if she could, it's a good thing she cut the link off, because she would not like what was happening there. Okay, so I reached out to Devin Grayson because I wanted to know some things. So I said, Devin Grayson, I just read your Nightwing 75 for coverage on my Babs podcast. Is Barbara really that worried about Dick getting himself, quote, in trouble with tarantula, or is there something else going on? Was it just tarantula, or could it have been any attractive female in tights? And she says, with the caveat that I wrote that literally 20 years ago and don't remember, I would guess she's worried about Tarantula specifically. She knows Dick has a propensity to try to save people from themselves, and also that his laser focus can only be on one thing or person at a time. So this is an interesting comment from her because there's really no romantic or sexy aspect in that answer, because I would think Babs is concerned about, oh gosh, is he going to be attracted to this woman? Is something going to happen in that category? And here it's more, oh no, is he going to try to, save this person or bring her into the fold or figure out who this is and get all tied up and not sleep again? I then said, from the beginning, were you sowing the seeds for what Tarantula would do to Nightwing, if you know what I mean? And she said, no, not at all. The blockbuster part, yes, but the rooftop scene was a spur of the moment, ill-conceived, unforgivable, but ultimately very educational, horribly failed attempt to literally illustrate, in quotes, the degree to which Nightwing had ceded control to her at that moment in time. Obviously, the worst part of that was the pain and discomfort it caused some readers. But from a narrative standpoint, it also ended up distracting from the story rather than enhancing it. And it really didn't have to be there at all. It was not integral to the story at all. And then she gave a sad-faced emoji. Oh, and more is like the distressed emoji of like, oh man. Fortunately, I've learned a great deal about myself, about feminism and allyship, and about narrative in the ensuing 20 years. But that panel remains my deepest regret in print, which was sad. Like I felt bad asking once I was getting these responses because I didn't want her to think that I was trying to shame her into that scene. I just wondered, from the very beginning, we see this woman really flirting, like really throwing it out there to Dick Grayson. And then we have that scene, which is more Dick Grayson, I guess, innocently straddling Tarantula, but it's kind of, it's risque and like, maybe you should have rethought that, Nightwing. Well, I just don't know. I don't know. I'll be reading her run and I'll get to that rape scene that she's talking about, but Devin, if you're listening to this or watching it, I promise I was not trying to lead you into a trap. I was just seeing if you knew where you were going and you were planting some things. I did say thank you for your responses. I just got to your run and I may reach out from time to time with questions, mainly about Babs, if that's okay. And she said, absolutely, with a big heart and a little heart. So I'm looking forward to that. I really appreciate her answering my questions. That's all I want. I recently reached out to an author that I'm going to be covering, whose work I'm going to be covering on my Dear Reader podcast, and I didn't hear anything from her. So I appreciate when people answer, as long as you're kind, I think, and also you're appreciative of the responses and the time that they give you. So, there's a lot going on here, and I'm worried about Babs. That's all I can say. I'm worried about your Babs. Oh, okay. Well, here's hoping. I wanted to scroll down at least and see that one last time. Man alive. Okay. My girl, I'm with you. I am with you to the end of the line, as Steve and Bucky used to say to each other. Okay. Well, I'm not going to rate any of those. It's more, hey, I'm just trying to understand where we are going, where Babs is, where's this relationship between Dick and Babs going, etc. I think that's it. That is it for my front half, the vintage half of the episode again. It was just a bunch of quickies. But next episode, we will actually do an arc, I promise. But I don't think it'll be... I'm just not ready for the Joker. Maybe I can pressure Carol and Coca to doing that with me so we can commiserate over that story together. Okay, no listener emails. So I don't know what you people are doing. So I'm going to take a break. And when I come back, I will be covering some modern quickies. Maybe including Batman. I don't know yet. Right now, Batman 114 I have read, and Babs was not in it. So I have to wait for Batman 115. Nightwing I'll definitely cover. Batman Urban Legends I will definitely be covering. But first, it is Zaius's Radio Hour featuring Butter by BTS. See you guys soon. Happy fall. Finally, get out there and enjoy the day. welcome back. So this is just the modern tales and quickies with Babs. Now, like I said before the break, Batman 114, which is Fear State Part 3, Barbara does not appear, unless I missed it, but I did go through it twice. So then we shall move on to Batman 115, Fear State Part 4. We have writer James Tynion IV, artist Bengal, and George Jimenez, and colors Tomu Mori. Batman and Miracle Molly are all that stands between Gotham City and absolute insanity. But an unhinged Simon Saint brings all the resources of the magistrate to bear on the Dark Knight. Is victory at hand for the Scarecrow? Here we see a panel of Batgirl suiting up, which is the wrong suit, so I'm a bit confused about that art-wise. Nightwing is looking sheepish behind her. It's an interesting panel, to be sure. And they are both in the clock tower, and then there's a panel of Steph and Cass elsewhere, I think, just to give us a sense and context of what everyone is doing. We have the backup, which is where I'm going to focus my time here. It is Clueless Part 1, writer Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, artist George Corona, colors Sarah Stern. So this is the Batgirl's backdoor pilot. Batgirls Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown have each other's backs no matter what, even if it means punching some magistrate soldier butt and putting an even bigger target on their backs. Meanwhile, a mysterious anti-Oracle character finally makes contact directly with Babs and has a few things to say about the unethical nature of Oracle's powers and what they think should be done about it. Ooh. This backup is pretty important, not only because, of course, it is, like I said, a backdoor pilot into the Batgirl's proper comic book, but we get some big details here about the anti-Oracle. We find out that this anti-Oracle knows Barbara's identity. This is Barbara's secretary, it says. Later on, we'll find out that the anti-Oracle knows other people's identities as well. We also find out that the Oracle is a she, and later on, this Oracle, anti-Oracle, takes on the name or nomenclature of Seer, which isn't very inventive on her part. But I suppose if we're playing word or name association with Oracle, Seer makes a lot of sense. I love the art, just as I'm flipping through. It has that street punk style that I usually associate with Robbie Rodriguez, but I think it really fits the tone of this book. If we're going to have a fun book and a lighter tone, and that it mostly represents 2/3 of the team, I think that this is a great style. It's bright, it's flashy, it's colorful. Love it. This starts off with a bang. I kind of has to in terms of the current storyline that's going on throughout the Batman titles, but just seeing how the Batgirls are being used, in particular, I think Cassandra and Stephanie, and then Babs is doing her own thing, of course, and she's important, but just in another capacity. We get to see the relationships between each of the characters and what their individual roles will be like. Babs seems to be, a fully capable den mother, as well as the handler, I think, of both of the women and the mentor. Cass is definitely the fighting machine. And then Steph, I think, is a go-between right now. And I think we'll see where that develops. I feel like she's in a bit of an interstitial space of who she's going to be and how she develops. But it's fun to see her interaction, Stephanie's interaction with Barbara here, just that Barbara gets a little annoyed at the questions and things like that, and then later on apologizes. But it just feels nostalgic Barbara, because we've seen this pretty recently in the past where she gets a bit upset at Steph as well. I like seeing Cass and Steph on the street fighting together. Babs is fighting her own war back home, the only way that she knows how, the only person who could fight that particular war. So everyone has their place, and they are a necessary part of the team, which I think is good. We don't have any fat to trim, and I think each one of these will develop, and I'm looking forward to see how they all develop as well. This was interesting, this one part where Seer pops up and says, "I'm your daddy." It's just like Seer goes for shock value, certainly. And we'll actually see that later on in the Nightwing issue as well. So Seer knows these people pretty thoroughly, which is shocking. I am not exactly sure who this person is. I wonder if it's a known entity or not. But the entire time we actually have particular style of bubbles, which is interesting. Pink speech bubbles with blue and yellow squares near them, almost like COVID molecules. I don't know, but even the screens match those bubbles. So I enjoy that. And then, so, honestly, I don't have too much to say about this. Everything I have to say is really positive, but this is just, I think, whetting our appetites. I feel like maybe once we get, because there are 3 parts, once we finish this arc, then I'll be able to give you a better sense of what I think. But, if I were to just look at this, am I interested? Do I like it? Do I feel like it's engaging and beautiful? I think yes to all of those. I'd probably give it a 9. I'd give it, a 9 out of 10 Your Daddies. It's mostly set up, so that's really generous right now. But I think a lot of it is just excitement for what this holds in store. And we needed to be excited. This is just part 1. It's a backup in the part 1, which there's nostalgia there again, because Barbara always played a role in the backup in Detective Comics in the past, in the Bronze and Silver Age. So that's kind of fun, but we'll see. So right now I'm excited. I'm looking at this and I'm like, if this is what it's going to be when we get Batgirl's official, then I will be super happy about it. So now let's move on to Urban Legends, number 8. Kind of, sort of. So I'll always talk about it briefly. So this is Disinformation Campaign Part 1, writer Alyssa Wong, artist Vasco Georgiev, and colorist Rain Barreto. Batwoman Fear State tie-in. Someone has hacked into the Oracle network and has started spreading information around Gotham. Batman is dead. Cassandra Cain Batgirl is a killer. Fear toxin is in the air, which is true and which is false. Batwoman will find out with the help of Commissioner Renee Montoya and Kate's sister Beth, aka Red Alice. Yeah, that's certainly how I felt as well. So I just want to say that, well, here it is, right? Where Cass was. We all knew it, right, Donovan? We all knew that Cassandra was a murderer. And here we are proven that is true. No, I've missed so much. This is what I was thinking when I pulled this open. I thought, wow, I sure miss a lot with Kate. She's no longer pale. Her sister is somewhat mentally stable. Kind of interesting for sure. But I think the most, we see some more development here. I just haven't been reading with Kate. And then we had that Ryan person and I missed Kate, but it wasn't as worth it. Then there's some romantic tension, of course, with Renee and Kate as well, but who knows what their actual history is. So here's Cass, and loving that, by the way. But I love this section. I just wanted to look at this. I think someone's trying to set you up, framing Batgirl for murder, sowing distrust and fear of the bats. That's effective psychological warfare. It would benefit any number of our enemies. Someone hacked Oracle. Cass later says, I'm not a murderer. What if no one believes me? And Kate says, as Batwoman, of course, I do. So I think that these people, these 2 characters, have actually associated with each other when they were in the Tynion run of Detective Comics, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've read that. But this is like a finally sort of panel. The fact that someone believes in a team member, even if there is incriminating evidence to the contrary, they just believe them on the merit of their character prior to that. There wasn't even any explanation. And I feel like every time up to now, especially in the vintage stuff that I've been doing, they have to explain themselves and there's like an attack and someone's trying to shut them down. And by someone, I mean Batman. It's constantly Batman who doesn't believe, or maybe it's just a trolling and the readers believe it. And then in the next issue, it's all explained. But just finally, there wasn't a trolling here. And there was just compassion and camaraderie, I guess I would say. So there you go. Oh, yeah, I stopped sharing. But at one point, Beth is standing over a bunch of magistrates, soldiers, and says, I almost killed all those people, but her knife is out and it's bloodied. So I don't know if there's any almost about it, but whatever. Okay, so then we'll end with the big shebang, which of course is Nightwing 85, Fear State Part 2. Writer Tom Taylor, artist Robbie Rodriguez, colorist Adriana Lucas. Babs takes the anti-Oracle attack on her Oracle network personally, and she suits up as Batgirl, accompanying Nightwing and Tim Drake to track down who is responsible. But with fear consuming the streets of Gotham, Batgirl and Nightwing accidentally get hit with something that reveals their deepest fears, and it evolves each other. Wow, that synopsis actually is pretty spoilerific and slightly lying, mainly because of the Tim. They don't really do too much. But if we go through, so we get to do a nice little rehash with one of the the variant covers here. But yeah, see, that doesn't really look like the outfit that she had on in Batman. But anyways, okay. So here we go. So how to even begin with all of this? So, okay, stop saying so. Here's Seer. So Seer finally appears and looks like Mr. Sinister if you're an X-Men fan. Not really sure about this particular design, but she is female, or as far as we can tell, and she knows a great deal, personal identities included. The narration boxes, which I think really for this whole thing, Batgirl is in fact the narrator. Really interesting color scheme. We have red outline and red bat, and then I think purple. It's hard to tell. It could be purple or could be a blue, but that's where we are. So it's just really interesting why we would go with that. Perhaps we'll find out. But I guess they didn't want to overlap. Maybe they want it to be complementary colors with Nightwing. I don't know. So Barbara does, of course, something that would make sense, which is destroying her entire computer setup at the clock tower. And she needs to go and find her secondary one and either use that or destroy it. But she really is gung-ho about this. And you have to kind of wonder, if someone's life is so wrapped up in that and half of their identity is that, how difficult it actually must have been for her to destroy that whole setup. And I'm glad that she had somebody. Oh, man. And Dick checks in, which is nice. You know, are you sure you're up for what's about to go down? But she, again, takes it pretty personally that, you know, she's using my name. She's attacking my people. I've got to be the one to take her down, which, again, makes me wonder what is about to happen. And I'm trying to think. So we need 3 issues, which would be the end of, November would be Batgirls. So if that coincides with 86, then 86 might be Nightwing 86 and then Batman 117. That might be where something big happens. So that in Batgirls 1, I think we have the new status quo of however mobile Barbara is, because just to remind you, I believe that something big is going to go down, and that when she takes on this Oracle moniker, taking it back, she's going to take it back 100%. Though the only thing that goes against that theory right now is the fact that now we've taken away the anti-Oracle moniker and we've given that villain Seer. So I lose a bit of that there. Okay, so there is a nice little flashback of these two together, the classic blue and gray outfit, which is, of course, my favorite, if you didn't know that about me. I will say that Barbara does look older in this, which I think given, 52 and Rebirth, they're supposed to be more or less comparable in age, but she just looks slightly older. What's up with those pajamas? I don't really know, but there you go. There was something I wanted to say. Yes, this is a crucial page here. This is page 8. If you're watching the video, you don't need to obviously turn to, or if you have your own comic, but she's actually talking about her life. Let's see here. If I go back to 7, that she's sure she wants to do this. Sierra led you into a trap. She tried to murder you, and it was never even about you. And Dick says, I like to think it was a little about me, a bit smug. And Bab says, she did to hurt me. I know what that's like. Next page, I was shot. My life was changed forever. And all that pain was about hurting someone else. It wasn't even my story, which I think is really great, right? Throwing shade on the Killing Joke. And also, Dick later gives us some Barbara history, some classic Barbara history in the Justice League and Birds of Prey. He says, you sure as hell made it your story. You've done more as Oracle than any of us could hope to achieve. Your work with the Justice League, the Birds of Prey, you've helped save the world I don't know how many times. I really should keep a tally of that sort of thing. So just in those 3 panels, this particular page, I love Dick Grayson for this. I love Tom Taylor for this. Just respecting Barbara and respecting how far she has come. And I get a lot of Kim Yale and Ostrander feels from this, just taking a character that was really beaten down for no other purpose than to serve a story and serve someone else's story, and to give her purpose and to make her potentially, and I know I'm objective, but I also think or I know I'm biased, but I think also objectively one of the most important characters in the DC universe, someone that can really tie people together. So that's, I think, a really crucial page for sure. Okay, so the PJs, and there's a nice little shipper moment where as they go out, there's a nice little hand holding. And I love the fact that both of them, she even comments, both of them have disapproving authority figures that might be upset if they catch us. So, hey, let's have fun and also do this. And then it cuts right away to the present time and Nightwing and Batgirl, now not Batgirl and Robin, are swinging and going to her secret location. I actually love this page. This is page 11 in my document. This is probably one of my favorite art pages. I haven't done that in a while, but just again, I think really showing the strength of Robert Rodriguez, having that street punk art style and the movements and everything, and just the coloring and everything, I think is really cool. Later on, well, first of all, I will say that if Kira and Coco were here, I wonder what she would say about his arm placement on page 12 when he's swooping to get her. Luckily, it's it's lower. It's below. It's on the bat on the first panel, and then it's below the bat on her waist on the second panel. So it's forgivable. But he's copping a feel. He is copping a feel. Okay. Here we go. There's this fight, which is pretty cool with all the smoke and everything. I love the two of them working together in sync with each other, just like Dick and Tim are. So I think just certain members of the team really work well and choreograph well together. And then they're blasted by fear toxin. And then there's this huge panel. And number one, the art. Love it. But what happened inside, I did not love. Just the gunshot to his head. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I actually yelled when I read this because I thought, oh no, are we going to go back to this Rick situation, which I was not reading comics at that time, or I was not reading Nightwing at the time. And then I thought, oh wait, there's got to be something more. But you can see, oh man, this is shipperific as well as tragic, just because you can see how much he means to her in her emotions and what she's doing. I mean, and to a certain extent, she loses control. She doesn't get to the edge of like she's about to murder someone, but you can see, I mean, when Batgirl / Barbara Gordon lets loose, people need to watch out for sure. I think she holds back to a certain extent sometimes, kind of like Superman. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, we get pulled out of there. And Tim rescues both of them by giving them an antitoxin through an air mask. And then, Dick, I thought you were gone. Yeah, you too, Babs. And then shipperific moment. They kiss, which is lovely. And again, I can't tell where his hand is. Maybe it's on her waist, but again, she's the one I feel like, remember a couple issues ago where before he had to go make that speech, she was the one who grabbed his face. Man, she's totally taking command of this relationship, which I love that a great deal. And then Tim, someone on the Twitters, Trevor, I believe his name is, said, you know, this panel sums it all up. And I'm like, absolutely. When Tim is standing there smiling and saying, oh, finally, that was great. And then Seer pops in. And she says, I figured it would be bats or something, but nope, your greatest fear is losing each other. I mean, it would be touching if I wasn't trying to destroy you. So just seeing that, which is both good and bad, because you know people's weaknesses once you see that sort of situation. But again, here at the end of this, we're nearing the end of this issue here. Babs is the one to discover something big about the current mission. We've seen this in the past with vintage tales like Fugitive and Murder and things like that. But here she uses her second base to hack into Seer's camera, and Seer thinks that's not going to do anything. But here, Babs can actually see the background and see where Seer is, which I feel like is really big and something that I hopefully will come into play later on. And unfortunately, though, Seer, I mean, she's like, hey, good job. But guess what? I actually had an attack planned on you. You were here, but no one was attending your hideout, and 2 people visited you, and those 2 people are Steph and Cass. And I love that Babs in her narration says 2 wonderful women whom I'm intensely proud of, talking about when she wasn't Batgirl and people stepped in. And Dick tries to call them and tell them and warn them. And unfortunately, well, Cass says there's something there. You kind of see a shadow and everything. Steph wonders what's going on. And then there's a big explosion at the clock tower. So you heard it here first, folks. Steph and Cass are dead. The Batgirls, it's not going to happen. And Batgirl's Clueless Part 1 of 3, that was a joke. It's just going to be Clueless Part 1, and that's it. No, I'm sure they made it out with Cass there. I'm sure she sensed something was going to happen, or Oracle may have had some sort of place for them to hide out, some sort of shelter. We know that it's okay, but seriously, Kurkum. I think I wrote to Donovan after I read this yesterday and said something like, Cass and Steph are dead. And then he wrote in all caps that, now Babs will forever be Batgirl, just how you always wanted it. I don't think I ever said that. But so we'll just pretend that Steph and Cass are DED dead. And well, Barbara certainly thinks so, since she's saying that Oracle is going offline. And it looks like that this particular story connects in Batman 116. So that backup. So Clueless Part 2. So I guess I lied to you. Clueless Part 2 will be where we next see these ladies. Okay, so continually loving Nightwing. Again, this isn't a Nightwing podcast, so I feel like I'm not going to rate it, but that was really good. I guess if I did rate it, I might give it a 10 out of 10. Yeah, a 10 out of 10. Fear toxin-induced deaths which lead to a kiss. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to move on. My last segment, I already showed you what I was wearing. It's my UVA football kit. So now I just have my literature recommendations, and I don't have as many. Hopefully next episode I'll have a bit more. I was going to do some readings on my journey to NYC. I was going to read some Amazing Spider-Man graphic novels. Okay, so first up is the sequel to what was it called? The Air Affair. This is called Lost in a Good Book. This is the Thursday Next second book by Jasper Ford. And let's see here. If Thursday thought she could avoid the spotlight after heroic escapades in the pages of Jane Eyre, she was sorely mistaken. The love of her life has been eradicated by Goliath, everyone's favorite corrupt multinational. To rescue him, Thursday must retrieve a supposedly vanquished enemy from the pages of The Raven, but pose off limits to even the most seasoned literary interloper. Enter the most seasoned literary interloper. Okay, no. Enter a professional, the man-hating Miss Havisham from Dickens' Great Expectations. As her new apprentice, Thursday keeps her motive secret as she learns the ropes of jurisfiction, where she moonlights as a prose resource operative inside books. As if jumping into the likes of Kafka, Austen, and Beatrix Potter's tale of the Flopsy Bunnies weren't enough, Thursday finds herself the target of a series of potentially lethal coincidences, the authenticator of a newly discovered play by the bard himself, and the only one who can prevent an unidentifiable pink sludge from engulfing all life on Earth. And I will say that it ends on a cliffhanger because we're getting close to the end. And I thought, where is this guy? And he doesn't pop up. So that's all I'll say. I'm looking forward to reading. I think there are 6 total, but I need to pause because of my Jane Eyre podcast. I needed to read some Jane Eyre stuff, which here we go. This is called Brightly Burning by Alexa Dunn and 17-year-old Stella Ainsley. Yes, you heard correctly. Wants just one thing, to go somewhere, anywhere else. Her home is a floundering spaceship that offers few prospects, having been orbiting an ice-encased Earth for 200 years. When a private ship hires her as a governess, Stella jumps at the chance. The captain of the Rochester, 19-year-old Hugo Fairfax, is notorious throughout the fleet for being a moody recluse and a drunk. But with Stella, he's kind sometimes. But the Rochester harbor secrets. Stella is certain someone is trying to kill Hugo, and the more she discovers, the more questions she has about his role in a conspiracy threatening the fleet. Jane Eyre and space, people. I won't tell you thumbs up or thumbs down. You need to listen to Dear Reader, episode 3. And then finally, The Lost Apothecary, which was on a Goodreads best of list from 2020 by Sarah Penner. A female apothecary secretly dispenses poisons to liberate women from the men who have wronged them, setting 3 lives across centuries on a dangerous collision course. Rule number 1, the poison must never be used to harm another woman. Rule number 2, the names of the murderer and her victim must be recorded in the apothecary's register. One cold February evening in 1791, at the back of a dark London alley in a hidden apothecary shop, Nella awaits her newest customer. Once a respected healer, Nella now uses her knowledge for a darker purpose, selling well-disguised poisons to desperate women who would kill to be free of the men in their lives. But when her new patron turns out to be a precocious 12-year-old named Eliza Fanning, an unexpected friendship sets in motion a string of events that jeopardizes Nella's world and threatens to expose the many women whose names are written in her register. In present-day London, aspiring historian Caroline Parswell spends her 10th wedding anniversary alone, reeling from the discovery of her husband's infidelity. When she finds an old apothecary vial near the River Thames, she can't resist investigating, only to realize she's found a link to the unsolved apothecary murders that haunted London over 2 centuries ago. As she deepens her search, Caroline's life collides with Nella's and Eliza's in a stunning twist of fate, and not everyone will survive. And I think, yeah, that was okay. I would say that was like a middle. It was a thumbs almost up. I don't know. Caroline there was a lot bemoaning the whole situation with her husband, which I guess that should be allowed and one should empathize with it. But it got better. Like once she went on this mystery and she started to find her. I mean, towards the end, she like became her own person rather than the person married to Mr. Parswell. So it did get better at the end, I think. And it was really intriguing how the stories ended up aligning. So I would say just the beginning and certain parts with Caroline were annoying. But other than that, it was pretty good. Okay, well, this is it. So you remember, you can send any questions or comments to batgirltheoracle@gmail.com. You can also find the show on Google Play and Stitcher, and like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter @BatgirlTheOracle. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, obviously, for an uncut version. If you didn't, you missed the nude pictures that I was putting up over Nightwing, about Nightwing, of Nightwing. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support TBU by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Next time, fingers crossed, my ex-work husband plus Cassandra Cain and Roman history. Here's hoping. But until then, fly on, Babs lovers.
Just plain Barbara Gordon, masquerading for a lark as she rides into the night on her special Batgirl cycle. Who knows? Is the dynamic duo destined to become the triumphant trio? Only time will tell us more about this dazzling daredoll.
I love a happy ending, don't you?